Okay. So, yeah, thanks for chatting with me. Like you said before we started, it's been a long time, and the last time was at Smoke's Poutineery in downtown
I
London.
was gonna say, I think we went to Smokes once, and we went to was it Bearcat? I think they've changed the name now to Tahini's or something, but I think we went to Bearcat one time.
I remember the Smokes. I don't remember
Okay,
the Bearcat one.
and that must have been what, like 8 years ago. It's been a while.
I think you had just left TD or something.
Okay, so yeah, maybe like 6 years ago, seven, something like that. It's been a bit though.
Yeah, and you've been busy since then. I mean, like,
Yeah, some things have changed. Definitely, a lot has changed in those years. A lot's changed recently, even in the midst of a pandemic. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Where do you want to start?
well, I really like your website, your personal one.
My portfolio, yeah.
If you don't mind, I'm just gonna share the screen because I just wanted to tell you what I like about it so that I can figure out how to make my website cooler.
Sure, I can talk a lot about that. I deal with that quite a bit, and even with my new role, I deal with portfolios and kind of advertising yourself and helping students a lot. So I can we can definitely talk about that one.
Okay, so you
Oh,
can
let's
see
see.
my screen.
I can see it popped up here. Yeah,
Okay, so yeah, it's really cool that there's you. That's awesome.
that is me.
And yeah, it's
There's
cool because as you scroll down, you can see the tabs here, but
yeah.
that'll just take you further down. So if I click my work, which is your work, it'll show you all of your projects. So I really like the layout that you have here, where you have a grid of looks like 15 items,
Yeah.
and then of course if you click on them, it'll link to the associated website.
Honestly,
And
if for anyone that's trying to make a portfolio of anything you do, I started this like I want to say 5 or 6 years ago. When I finished up
okay,
a post grad, I wanted to get into the gaming industry, and pretty much a requirement of that industry is that you have a portfolio of some type to show. So I decided, let's make a website. It's easier to hand off to employee or employers, potential employers, and it gets the word out there. And most of my friends did that too. My colleagues and peers in school. One thing I always suggest is take the like the 10 or 15 bucks it takes to buy a template to start. That's what I did. That one's been
okay,
heavily edited since then. But even like I'm okay at web design. Obviously, I'm a programmer and a techie by trade, but it's not my favorite thing to do. In fact, I actually really don't like doing like style sheets and all that stuff for websites. Buying that, I think it was like 15, maybe 20 bucks, maybe that. And like I said, I've had it for like 6 years now, and it's worked for a long time. It's landed me more than one job in the past. And yeah, I just kind of keep it updated. I actually have I built a separate PHP page, like a form essentially that I can fill out with like the name of the game, when I worked on it, and screenshots and all that stuff. And it just spits out one of those pages for me as well, which is really nice because it keeps everything standardized. It keeps it all aligned, keeps all the style of it good. Like when things happen, like we go into a new year, like we just did, it updates like the copyright at the bottom to 2021. Try to make that stuff automated as much as you can, and then it just kind of does the heavy lifting for you.
okay, yeah, that's pretty cool. What are you using? Is it WordPress, Squarespace, or
It's no, it's
your
just
own?
like a straight up HTML static website. It does have a little
Oh,
bit of PHP in the back end for that form, like I mentioned, but most of it's just HTML, CSS, a little bit of PHP, and that's pretty much it.
oh man, that's so cool. Yeah. Um, I really like your your eye game. You're staring at the camera. I'm so unprofessional. I don't even do that.
Honestly, I don't even notice I do it now. It's such a habit with work. I guess we can maybe talk about that. That's kind of an interesting one.
Sure.
Yeah, so a few months ago, I joined Unity. For anyone that might be listening that doesn't know, we're one of the world's biggest game engines. At least we started out as a game engine technology company. We've really migrated to just about any 3D rendering tech space these days. But I joined as a as what they used to call an evangelist. We've changed now to developer advocates, which is a really cool job. And It would have been a lot cooler if we weren't in the midst of a pandemic, because I'd get to travel the world and guest lecture at a lot of universities, go to a lot of the big gaming trade shows, and actually like be up on stage presenting and talking about the technology. That's kind of what I was, I don't want to say sold, but kind of what the idea of the job was. And then, they thought, oh, we'll be back out on the road in a month or two. And that was like 8, 9 months ago. And now we're still locked down
Right.
because of the pandemic. So hopefully one day we'll get back to it. But in the midst of that, in the midst of the pandemic, I've gotten so used to doing presentations online and just making that eye contact with the camera that like I
Yeah.
don't even notice it anymore. It's just kind of comes with the territory.
So I don't play video games often. I did a lot when I was a kid. I think the last one I really got into was God of War. So
Mhm.
that's a long time ago. And so, like, what is Unity? How does it work?
Sure. So I kind of like to describe it as everyone kind of uses like Microsoft products, like they're using Windows on their desktop, or they're using maybe Microsoft Word or Excel or PowerPoint. And we're kind of the technology that gives you the power to then create your Word document or your PowerPoint presentation, where you're not necessarily trying to make a Unity project, you're trying to make a video game. And traditionally, you would have had to program that yourself. And doing that takes a long time. It takes forever to get that set up. You need a big team, a lot of money, a lot of resources to do that. And in came Unity, and we kind of really simplify the job. We make things a lot more drag and drop. You still can program if you want. You can still like create all your own art assets if you want, but it really simplifies things a lot in the process. So traditionally, it was used a lot for video games, and it still is. We're a huge part of the gaming space. More recently, games like Among Us, that's a huge internet meme right now, that was made on the Unity engine. In the summer, Fall Guys, that was made in the Unity engine. Some bigger games even on console, like Ori and the Will of the Wisp, or Untitled Goose Game. A lot of these like kind of bigger indie games all use us as their base technology, and then they build their product out on top of that. So we're used a lot in that. We're kind of changing now as well, going into a lot more industrial uses, which before I took this job, I was working as a programmer and I was using Unity, but we often actually made non-gaming tech. We use something like the Microsoft HoloLens, like augmented reality, where you put this headset on your head, it kind of spatializes and maps out your environment around you, and you can put 3D models then into that environment. We are using that for like medical simulations. We did a few games like that. It's really being used a lot in like training and in the education space. So you can do a lot with the technology. So it makes it a really interesting job, and I get to talk to a lot of interesting people and see a lot of cool projects.
Cool. I just adjusted my light because I saw yours looks really nice and bright.
Like
Uh,
again, it's part of the perk. Always got always on some kind of meeting these days, so I have the lights going and the mics and all that stuff. So
but yeah, it's cool. It sounds like you're having fun. Talking to people. I mean, it's always more fun to go to places rather than doing it online. But I mean, there's not really many options now.
no, and I mean, I think I struggle like most people do with just being bored, stuck at home. Never really, even though we're in a like I guess like the most complete version of the lockdown right now, where it's we're not supposed to go out really at all. Even before that, just working at home for the last, I don't know, whatever it's been, year, like really since March, I've always just been working from home, and definitely feeling the fatigue. I think like a lot of people would just love to get out there and do something else and just get out of this little room and just see anything, not even just work related, just life related at this point. I just want to get out of the house. So I'm sure you must be feeling the same.
Yeah, it sucks because I haven't really hung out with friends for a year. I mean, I went for a couple of runs, but that's not really you're not really sitting around, so I thought it was pretty safe.
Yeah.
So now these days, I'm just at home, just watching movies, going shopping for the family. I'm living with my parents right now,
Mhm.
so it's it's tough. I cannot wait to just go out and chill, just hang out with
Do
friends.
anything different that's not just sitting at home and hanging out with the same people. Yeah, I feel that.
I would love to see a movie in theaters. That's my first thing.
Yeah, it's been a long time. It's I'm actually kind of surprised theaters aren't collapsing more than they are really, because essentially like they haven't had business in what, 9 months or something at this point. Like I hope they can stay around because it's an experience I don't want to go away, but I don't know how
Yeah.
they support themselves for much longer.
Yeah, it's crazy. And at least in the US, I think it was Warner Brothers, they're streaming their movies on HBO Max, which is Crave here in Canada. So, I mean, at this point, my parents have a subscription to that. So it's cool. I can just watch some of the movies that come out. But I'm not sure if that applies to Canada. Like, for example, when the Zack Snyder's Justice League comes out on HBO Max, whether it's going to be available in Canada. But, I
I
mean,
saw that
let,
deal, and from what I've heard, I don't think it is in Canada, which sucks. It's you get to see the ads
uh,
and everything for American counterparts, but I don't think it's coming out here. But I hope it does, because I think that's a really interesting take, though. I'm really curious to see how that turns out as a business decision, because I mean, I don't know what the back end deal is, but like, are they getting a cut for every person that watches this or subscribes to HBO Max or whatever because of it? And then how does that stack up versus just, revenue from the regular cinemas or movie theaters? And will other companies adopt that?
yeah, I have no idea how streaming companies make money. I know they bid on movies so they can stream it on their platforms. And obviously, the end goal is to get more and more subscribers. Netflix has increased its price twice in the last 2 or 3 years. I used to have a subscription for $9.99 and now it's at $14.99.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that's one way to do it. If you increase it $1 and you have 100 million subscribers, that's $100 million.
Yeah, that's it's a lot. And I mean, what are you doing? Like, do you have all the different services? I know we have Netflix, Disney, uh, Amazon, and then I subscribe to like Xbox Game Pass, which is for games, but kind of the same idea. What are you subscribing to these days?
Well, I got Netflix, so I pay for Netflix in my family, and we have the two-user account. So I watch
Mm-hmm.
it, and my sister or my parents watch it at the same time, or at least they can. Then my sister and I split a year subscription of Disney Plus, uh, and I also have Amazon Prime because I end up ordering stuff online, and video comes with it.
Mm-hmm.
And the family has Crave, which is for a few months because there was a deal. But yeah, there are too many services, and now I have a list of 100 movies to
Mm-hmm.
watch, and it's so hard to choose what to watch because you're always just like, no, I don't want to watch this, but there's this other one.
I get the same thing where you sit down and you're like paralyzed by choice now. There's almost too much
Yeah,
to stream, and it's too easy to access everything. I've been thinking about that. I'm like, do I really need three or four streaming services these days? Like, I mean, and then there's just
yeah.
like plain old YouTube and stuff we screencast as well. And I mean, for a long time, I was just using just Netflix and YouTube, and I was doing fine. And I kind of just keep buying into these new ones, but we'll see. And I find like even with Disney, it's like I mean, I think like most of us, I grew up in like the '90s as a Disney kid and remember all those classics from that like Renaissance era, whatever they call it. But now I watch like the odd Pixar movie, and that's about it. And I don't watch a
Hmm.
lot of their. I'm actually really unfamiliar with the Marvel universe. I mean, as a giant kind of video game tech nerd, everyone's always surprised about that. But I think I've seen like maybe the first and second Iron Man. I think I
Okay.
saw the first Captain America, and we just watched the first two episodes of WandaVision, which I have no idea what's going on. And I don't know if it's because I don't know the universe or I just don't get the show. But I think that's about my extent of those products.
No, WandaVision is weird. I just last month watched all the Marvel movies, like one each day. So I watched 23 in 24 days, and that was a lot. And there are a lot of shows too, but I haven't watched all of them. I'm still watching the Netflix Marvel shows like Luke
Mhm.
Cage and Jessica Jones and those
I,
types of
I did
things.
watch Jessica Jones. I actually liked it. And I haven't seen any of the Luke
Yeah.
Cage stuff though.
Yeah, I think Luke Cage, I've seen the first season. It's okay. Iron Fist is also okay. Daredevil is amazing. Like season three was awesome, and the first two are also good. Uh, but WandaVision, it's I think it's supposed to be weird. It's
That's kind of what I
set,
took. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's set after Avengers Endgame, which was the last movie of that saga. And I think it's supposed to be mysterious because you don't know what the like it's not clear exactly when after that movie this is set. And I think that's part of the show's story to use that television medium to create suspense week by week.
Yeah, it's to reveal it slowly over time. And we've already got a few kind of hints, I guess. And like I said, I don't know a lot of the stuff, but like I noticed there was like a Hydra watch or something in one scene. And like
Yeah.
you assume there's something there. And like I'm like, okay, I remember they were the bad guy in Captain America, but that's about all I know. So I'm like, am I missing something? I don't know.
No, I'm excited. It's yeah, I don't know. It's just weird because now there's going to be a new Marvel thing every week, basically. Because once this one ends, they'll start the next show, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And then after that, there'll be a Black Widow movie. And I'm a fan, so I'm going to watch it. But I really hope I don't get like overloaded or fatigue
Well,
of.
that's kind of where I feel like not even seeing these movies, I'm like, I feel like I'm so far behind now that it's so hard to get caught back up that I've kind of just written them off. And like
Yeah.
all the movies I've seen, it's not like I don't like them or I don't have anything against Marvel per se. I just like I'm so far behind and I'm like, do I really want to go like what you did? You went hardcore and just watched whatever 24 in a row or 24 after. I'm like, I don't know. It just seems like a lot. And I'm sure if I watched them, I'd like them. It's just there's just so many of them now.
No, I feel you. That's why I haven't seen a lot of popular shows. Like I've never seen Breaking Bad.
Mhm.
What is it? I've never seen Game of Thrones.
Me either.
The hype was too real at the time. I felt like
Yeah.
I can't do it.
No, I was the same way. Like, I remember like really hearing about it when it was like what season 3 or 4, when it was like huge and like everyone was talking about it. And it felt the same way where I'm like, I didn't have, I guess that was an HBO show, I think. And like I didn't have an
Yeah.
easy way to stream it. I know people were just, pirating it or watching it. And I was like, do I really want to go back and watch it all now? And I've still never seen a single episode. Still way behind on that front.
Oh man. So so you also have your Analog Casual Studios, which is your gaming company. Is that the correct term?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's kind of, I guess I kind of market it as a company, but really it's just like a label or something for me to work under when I do like little interesting side projects. Having a name to work under just kind of makes it seem more legit in a lot of ways. And it's kind of back to what we were talking about at the beginning, like having a portfolio, kind of marketing yourself, I think for jobs in the industry. It just makes you come off as bigger than you are. I guess it's kind of the whole fake it till you make it
Yeah.
thing. And like I've only released 3 or 4 games under that title, but at least it's kind of like bookends them all together under one company. If you go into an interview, you can be like, yeah, I have this. And I'm always very realistic that like, it's not like I'm making any real money off that. I think
Mhm.
the last game I put out was like 2 years ago. And I think it maybe made 1,000 US, but over like 2 years. So it gets,
Mm.
it's nothing essentially. Like it's not like I make any real money off of it. It's just a fun company to do. But I think it's important, especially if you are trying to get into the game industry, to be like, I am putting out games. I'm making stuff. It shows you're passionate about it and shows that you're actually doing this. You're not just talking about it. You're not just a portfolio or a face or whatever. You actually have something to prove that you're doing it and you're real about it. So that's kind of what that is. I mean, it started out as actually, if you remember Jason Higgins, we went to high school together. If you remember
Yep.
Jason, yeah. It must have been shortly after high school, maybe a year or two after high school, when we were in college together and we were both studying computer programming and we were interested in, we actually started, that's when I first started using Unity and started making games. And I remember being like, hey, I want to make this really simple game. And he was just kind of helping me on the side. And I was like, well, what should the name, like, what should we release this under? And I didn't really have any good ideas. And the name came from, it's the opposite of the big gaming company here in London, Digital Extremes. It's just the
Yeah.
inversion of that, Analog Casual. And I thought that was just kind of funny. It was just a joke when it started out. And I was like, yeah, sure, let's go with that. So that's what it's came out as. And that's what it's been since.
Man, I love that story. You just took digital extreme. The opposite of digital is analog, and the
Yeah.
opposite of extreme is casual.
And that
Oh
was it.
man.
And I mean, it's kind of worked out because for the most part, they've been pretty like casual mobile kind of games. And just like, I got one on Steam that's just a very casual kind of sliding block puzzle game. So the name's kind of worked out. I didn't intend on that at all, but it's worked out for a long time now. I think it's been, I think that was 2012 when I first released my first game. So 8 or so years. And I mean, I'm not releasing that many games under it. I make games and prototypes like all the time. I never really stopped doing that. But then in terms of actually getting one to completion and releasing it, I think there's only been like 3 or 4.
Oh yeah. Do you are you just too busy now to be working on another analog casual project?
I probably have 3 or 4 games in the works right now.
Okay.
I've had some that I've like taken pretty far where like, there's maybe like an hour of gameplay. I've taken to like trade shows and like people have really liked it and this and that. Usually, and I think a lot of game developers get this, is you just kind of get bored and distracted by another project. You get excited by a
Right.
new idea, you learn a new technology or a new method, and you kind of just get carried away. And honestly, that's probably one of the biggest challenges of being a game developer is just sticking to an idea for long enough to see it through. And
Hmm.
in my role, I talk to a lot of students, and I think that's one of the biggest things I say is uh, to any student, but particularly in tech, when there are so many advances and you learn new things and new techs out all the time, is come up with an idea, execute it, and then actually release it. And it'll take you a lot farther because you can actually prove to, again, to an employer or to someone that maybe you want to do freelance work with or whatever, that you can do that entire product life cycle. And it's more than just tech. It's like, okay, well, now obviously this person understands how to work with one of these bigger distributors, whether it be like Google Play or iOS or Xbox or Nintendo, whoever it is. You can actually say, yeah, I've gone out, reached to them, pitched them my project, or gone through those hoops and actually got it out on that. And that proves so much more than just making a game and throwing it up for free on whatever website, or just sharing it on like Facebook or whatever. And that's kind of back circling back to the portfolio. That portfolio is really just there almost as a container that, like, as I release these projects, as I do kind of new cool things, I just keep it updated. I don't expect that people are on that website every day looking up like, oh, who's Ben? What's he all about? It's really just there for when you need it, when you do meet, someone you want to work with and you want to prove yourself. And it's just a super easy way to be like, here's my website, go there, look at it, and they can kind of, approve or deny you really quickly without you having to like pitch yourself all the time.
Hmm. So what's the like how is the gaming industry or Unity or specifically or in generally is that affected by COVID? I mean, I would presume it isn't because you could game from home.
It's been weird. Gaming industry as a whole has actually had a really big boom. There's a lot more money
Okay.
going into it because everyone's at home. I mean, we've seen things like this before, like with the Great Depression, how like movies and entertainment and whatever entertainment mediums they had back then typically kind of went up when everything else went down because people are really looking for escape. Everyone's at home, super bored, lonely, mental health issues, whatever else it is. They want that escape. They want the distraction. So the console sales, just gaming sales numbers are way up. I think we saw some games like Animal Crossing came out really at the perfect time. It was early pandemic. It's a kind of a quiet, calming, relaxing game. You can make cool things and go see your friends' islands. And I think something like that came out at a really good time where it was that paired with everyone feeling kind of depressed and sad and isolated at home. And now here's this happy, warm, relaxing, friendly environment. So overall, there's more money going into it, but yeah, there are challenges. Compared to a lot of industries, obviously we work on our computers as our main platform. We can reach each other fairly easy because everything we do or most of what we do is digital. But it has caused a lot of slowdowns and headaches and issues in the industry as well. A lot of games have been postponed, whether due to COVID or whatever. But that's usually at least a big contributing factor. And I think it's like a lot of industries where the longer we go, the better we're going to get at dealing with online. Things have to change. We have to try new things. Some are going to fail, some are going to succeed. And let's say we stayed in lockup indefinitely at this point, who knows? Things do get better and teams are figuring it out, but it has slowed down production at the very least. So I guess it's kind of a yes and no, where overall gaming is doing better, but we have to learn new methods and new ways of doing things, just like pretty much everyone else.
Yeah. And I was just thinking about what you said about starting a game as a developer and finishing it just so you can show this is something I did and it's released. You can just check it out. So I don't do game development, but I'm taking that same approach with just consuming TV shows, books, and movies.
I've
And
seen
it's
that. Yeah, you
really,
got you share it on like Instagram or share it on wherever, and yeah, and like do little reviews and stuff.
yeah, that's my version of, those unfinished projects, I guess.
Hmm.
So I'm just trying to practice my writing and improve my writing through blog posts and Instagram posts. So every month on Instagram, I'll have a summary of the month with, books, movies, TV shows, maybe a couple pictures. But it's really annoying because there's some books they're so dry,
Hmm.
but I've already started. I'm reading one of them right now. It's called Thinking Fast and Slow. It's about how the brain thinks. I
Hmm.
started in July and I'm only a fifth of the way through. So I just have to read a little bit every day until I get that done.
So is this something like I guess kind of rolling back? Why do you feel like you need to have these books done? Is it just for the blog's sake? Is it so you can review them? Is it a personal goal? What's your driving motivation to actually completing one of these?
Uh, well, couple of things. What There are a lot of anime shows that I watched uh, years ago that I never finished, and when I remember about, like, I'll just remember randomly in the day. I'll just be taking a shower. I'll be like, oh man, I didn't finish that. I was just 14 episodes in. It was just another 11 to go. So it just comes up and it bothers me.
I'm like that
But
too. I feel that.
um, yeah, it's also for writing. That's a good point. I'm watching shows and movies specifically for writing so that I can force myself to say something about it, even though I don't know how to express what I'm trying to say. So today I just watched this Seth Rogen movie, An American Pickle. So if you haven't
I've
heard
not
about
seen that
it,
one. I have not.
he's he's a guy in Western Europe in 1919, and he works at a pickle factory and falls into a vat of pickled cucumbers, and then that vat gets covered up and he wakes up 100 years later being preserved at the same age because he was in brine. So 100 years later he meets his great grandson, I think it is, and the movie goes on from there. He learns about 2019, and then eventually they start up competing businesses trying to succeed. So anyway, it was a weird movie, but it was cool. And it's probably a bad example because I'm not going to write a review about it. But um, if I was going to write it, it would be like, I don't know. It's like sometimes you just need to do something, even though you're going to do it poorly, just so you can get it out of the way and show that you actually did it. Because most of the time, when I look back at something I've written, it's not as bad as I remember it.
Yeah, no, and I'm the same way where it's like I feel like sometimes stumbling through something and trying something and even if it is a failure, it still produces something internally at the end of the day, right? Even if it is a complete failure and utter disaster, like you learn from those mistakes and you do get better. And I'm kind of the same way of like, uh, I mean, I hate to fail. You know, it's not a great feeling. I don't think anyone likes it, but trying to remember that it's not always a bad thing and that it's okay to do that and that it does inspire growth and it's a learning opportunity. I've definitely had my fair share of those. And I think it's kind of similar in what the games I make that a lot of them aren't games I'm overly proud of. A lot of them are simple games that I would never personally even play. They're like mobile games, which I hardly ever, if I'm going to game, I'm probably on a PC or a console, usually not on mobile, but it's putting it out there and kind of reducing the scope of those projects from the beginning so that it is something that actually gets done. I've had bigger projects in the past and like, oh yeah, I'm going to go and try to get this published on Xbox or PlayStation or whatever. But then it just becomes it's a multi-year project. You're going to get bored. Life's going to get in the way. It's never going to get done. And I still think there's value in doing it because you do learn from the process along the way. I've started and stopped so many games, but then you take this technology or this process you did and you apply it to your next situation. But kind of doing those smaller challenges and those smaller tasks and actually getting something done and feeling good about it once in a while, compared to just kind of like, I have this goal, maybe I reach it, maybe I don't, but just kind of forcing yourself to do it. I've probably found more success making those small games than I ever have anything big, which I think is interesting. And it sounds kind of like what you're saying as well, of just like forcing yourself to do something, even if it's not the best thing that's ever existed. It's still a learning opportunity. You still improve yourself, right? So I think I can
Yeah, because
relate there.
yeah, the only way to get better at something is to do it. And when you're starting something, you're gonna be terrible. But if you only wait for the motivation, you're not gonna get very far.
Yeah.
When you go through iterations of terrible things, eventually you figure out what's not terrible, or someone starts to appreciate what you did. And even if that never comes, it's just it's a great exercise for um, developing what is it called, a discipline that
Mhm.
that can carry over into other parts of your life. And that's really what I'm doing with movies and stuff. It's not necessarily practically useful, but if I make it a disciplined thing to watch movies and TV shows, it makes me more selective, first of all, in choosing what to watch, and then maybe I
Mhm.
could even cut down from 3 or 4 streaming services to one. So yeah, I think it's a it's a good thing to have discipline as a person or a game developer or a student. Um, so speaking of students, you were a lecturer or a professor at Fanshawe, right?
Yeah, for 2 or 3 years there, I guess. I stopped that when I took this role because I thought I was going to be traveling and it just wouldn't be around enough or too many conflicts. But I only stopped last year. So yeah, I was teaching part time at Fanshawe College here. I taught. The first time I ever taught was we had a game development course. And this was like creating games the old school way, writing your own code, making your own game engines. And I taught networking for, I think, 1 or 2 semesters there. And then life kind of got busy and I stopped for half a year or so. And then I got back into it. They actually started a Unity course and they knew I was kind of into Unity. This is before I actually worked for the company, but I was using it day to day in my other programming job. And they kind of said like, hey, we want this. We recognize it's a growing tech. Students are asking for it. Employers are asking for it. We need someone to teach it. None of our guys know it. Do you want to do it? So I said, yeah. And I found that to be really interesting. You meet a ton of cool people. I actually, this was probably a weird thing. I had some of our past classmates from high school in my course that I was teaching, which
Oh,
that was kind of interesting and awkward. Out of respect, I won't name them here, but it was definitely an interesting scenario when you get your student list at the beginning of the year and you're like, I don't know many people with that name. Is that the same person? And then you go to class day one and it's like, oh wow, this is weird. We're like old high school buddies, but now I'm your professor. But it was a fun time.
man, the same thing happened when I went to Fanshawe in 2019 to do a 2 semester course in embedded programming, and one of my classmates actually went to school with one of our professors at Fanshawe College like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So I remember the first day, the prof is just like, I don't know, I'll just use a fake name, like Eddie. It's so good to see you. It was a
Yeah.
weird thing.
It is weird. And I remember the first time, I think it happened definitely twice, maybe 3 times in different courses where someone came up. And at first it feels weird because it's like we used to be peers and hanging out in like the lunchroom or whatever. And now there's this like weird power imbalance where it's like you're learning things from me and I'm marking your work and doing all this stuff. But then at the same time, I think like it is like learning is a continuous thing. And like a few of these people I know, they went and did some other kind of school, and maybe they dropped out or they got into industry, and they just wanted to change and they came back to it. So I'm like, you know what, I can't fault any of them. Maybe they're learning it after I did, but I was really kind of blessed, I guess, that I had direction right out of high school. I knew what I wanted to do, and it actually turned into a successful career path. Because I think a lot of people, you get out of high school and your counselors and everyone else is like, you got to do this, go to university, go to college, get a job, do all this stuff. And so many people are just forced into doing something that they're only half interested in, simply because they don't really know what they want to do at that point. And I think I was lucky, and I knew, from high school. I remember we had programming class in high school.
Yeah.
And I was always like, yeah, I want to be a game dev. This is what I want to do. And I mean, I worked in some other industries, but it was at least always programming, and at least always having that drive forward really helped me. So, but yeah, I mean, teaching was definitely a very interesting experience. I'd go back to it in a heartbeat if I had the chance. The online bit of it definitely makes it a lot more challenging, and I would say less rewarding, just because you don't have that face to face in person. But it's a good time.
Man, developing tic-tac-toe and Turing.
I remember that. I spent way too long on that project. I remember I had it if you were on the X's team, I think I did AI for that as well. But I remember if you were on the X's team when you won, it played DMX's X Gonna Give It to You as the background music. And if you were the O's, it was some weird soundbite of a Weird Al song where it was just, I think it was he had an R. Kelly in the Closet parody song, and I don't remember what it was called. But one part he was like, oh, oh, oh. And that was the winner. If you went on the O side, that was it. I still remember that. And yeah, those were some interesting times and some interesting ways to learn programming. Do you remember everything being the dog class? Everything was always a dog somehow?
Oh, yeah, because the teacher, she had a dog, and at some point her dog died. And I think I was a terrible person because I started making dead dog jokes to a couple of my friends, not to her, obviously, in class.
Oh,
but I don't know, man. Like the course was, I mean, Turing. Like no one uses Turing.
I don't know why we learned Turing. I don't know if that was even like government mandated at the time, because it's like the most useless thing. I don't think anyone's teaching that now. I mean, I guess it worked okay for computer science principles, but like just use JavaScript or Java or any of those other kind of high school languages. I don't know why we use that. But were you in the class before that where we made the Flash animations?
Yeah, that was like the web dev class in grade 10.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's the same thing. Like Flash is just, it's gone now. No one uses Flash. I mean, I think it's officially dead at this point off the web browsers. But I remember making Flash animations, and I was never very good at art. As a game developer, I'm a programmer, not an artist. But that was kind of fun back in the day.
The most hilarious Flash animation was one of our classmates, James. His animation was about head on applied directly to the forehead, and the animation
I kind of remember that.
It was just head on applied directly to the forehead. It just repeated like 17 times.
I remember that. Yeah, we had to like remake a commercial in Flash or something, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't remember what I made for that. I totally forgot about that project until right now.
Yeah, mine was Juicy Fruit. The taste is gonna move you.
I kind of remember that even. I don't remember what mine was like at all. I know I was in that class, but didn't stick with me, obviously.
Oh man, that was back when all we had to use was HTML basically, and maybe CSS.
Yeah. I mean, I will say those skills they've stuck with me a little bit. I wouldn't say necessarily because of that course. I didn't leave that course feeling inspired to do anything in particular, but it's the same tech I use today for a lot of stuff, and it still gets the job done. So I guess they did something all right.
Yeah, man, that's I don't know what else to say about that. Another thing I wanted to ask you about is you started doing woodworking.
Yeah, that was definitely a quarantine hobby, like something that I just I don't think I would have picked it up if it was just regular day-to-day life. But being stuck inside, being bored, just wanting to do something physical, something with my hands that wasn't, as much as I love tech and I love making games and all that stuff, being locked up and sitting, in front of this computer for whatever, 10 hours a day for a year, I'm just like, get me out of the house. And we actually had we bought the house we're in now about 2 years ago, and it didn't have a dishwasher in the kitchen, and we always planned on putting one in. And there was a spot where I wanted to put it in some existing cupboards, and we tried to hire some people to do it, but essentially the job was too small for anyone to be interested. So I could get someone to come in and like do a full remodel of the kitchen for like 20,000, but no one wanted to do just a quick like rip out some old cupboards, put in a new one, and install a dishwasher. So I think that paired with being bored, I was like, screw it, I'm gonna do it myself. So I went out and bought, a table saw and a miter saw, and I pretty much learned how to do it. And the dishwasher's in, it worked. We installed the dishwasher, and my life is forever way easier now. So many less hours of scrubbing dishes by hand. But that kind of kickstarted it, because then I had the saws, I had the equipment, and then it kind of turned into like the what else can I make? And then it became like I redid the closets. I don't know. I made it's kind of buried away, but like a cat house, like just whatever I could make out of scrap wood, mainly just because I was bored and it was something to do that was of interest to me, of some kind of value. It's kind of like what we wanted to talk about earlier, where like none of this stuff is particularly great. Like, I mean, my cupboards and stuff turned out okay, but it is like, I just want to learn these skills for the future. I don't know what I'm going to do with them or if they'll really be that handy or not, but why not try and see what happens? So, and it's a lot more interesting making something when there's a risk of like actually chopping off your finger versus the computer. It's just like, yeah, whatever.
No, I feel you on that. As much as I like doing engineering stuff, it's usually all on the computer or in the lab.
Mm-hmm.
And if it is all on the computer, you get tired of staring at the screen after 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
So it's really important to have something in your life where you're not sitting in one place, because most of your time is spent sitting in one place. I'm not really doing a good job, because the things I do outside of work stuff is reading and watching movies, which is sitting in the same place. But
at least
yeah.
I've actually picked up reading a lot more recently too. Like, I was never an avid reader. It was something I never really enjoyed, but I've actually found myself liking it a lot more because of that. Like, yeah, maybe it's not the most physical thing ever, but at least it's kind of different, and you're flexing a different mental muscle, I guess, with it, and learning some new perspectives, which I think is another side effect of COVID I wasn't expecting. Like, at least before, you were out, you were meeting like random new people, going to the mall or doing whatever you did. And now, like, the circles have shrunk so much, where you really do get even more echo chambers than normal, where it's like, you hang out virtually with the same few people. You have your same Facebook or Instagram or Twitter friends list. Like, it gets so confined. So I think for me, reading's really become that, like, oh yeah, there are other perspectives out there. And I've been kind of toying with the idea of reading books I wouldn't normally read. And I mean, like, kind of coming back to what you're saying, like forcing yourself to do it sometimes. And there's a difference between not liking a book because it's not well written, or like, it's just a boring book or whatever, versus like not liking it because you don't agree with an opinion or you find something kind of wrong with it. And I don't know about you, but I found that kind of interesting. And like, I want to, I think, force myself into that a bit more to try to understand more perspectives and get out there. And especially working in the tech industry, it typically is really like left liberal, like free, love everyone type of stuff. And obviously we're seeing some very different opinions about that kind of stuff in the world right now. And like, I don't get it. Like, straight up, I'm like, how can people support someone like Trump? Like, I straight up don't get it, but I'm like, obviously they can for some reason. And I kind of want to figure out why, and like truly understand that. I mean, we saw that with the protests last week or 2 weeks ago. People are more or less willing to go to war at this point to fight for a president that, like, for me, I'm like, why? I don't see it at all. But if you can like take in some of those perspectives and learn what these people are going through and what in their life has led to these events, I think it's worth doing other hobbies as well.
Yeah, you make a great point about reading a book, and like choosing to read it because you like the idea or the premise of the book, specifically nonfiction books where it's trying to talk about maybe a political ideology, or if it's an autobiography by a former president or prime minister, stuff, whatever topic may be. So that's one reason I want to finish the books I'm reading. I mean, they're not really political, or they don't really explore how people become a certain way or how they support certain parties, wherever in whatever country it is. But yeah, the one reason I like to go through the book and read it is for the reason that you said. It's you want to figure out what the perspective is, and you want to get the whole idea of the book. So usually, if you watch a documentary or a TV show, you can get if in a documentary you might get the whole idea in an hour and a half, and that's a form of storytelling too. But to sit down with the book, you're giving the author the ability to not physically sit down with you, but to explore a wider breadth of the topic over whatever 10, 20 hours that you spend reading it. My strategy for getting through a book is to read a chapter a day or find some way to parse it into different sections of the book. So I've said this example before to other people, but I'm reading this sci-fi series called The Expanse. There are eight books, and there are 9 total. I'm not sure if the last one is released, but the first one I put it off for a year because it was really boring. But then I just read 1 chapter a day. There were about 60 chapters, and after 2 months, I finished it. And now I love the series, and I'm about to start book 6. So that's the way I do it. And just last year, I read a book by this author and Toronto professor Jordan Peterson. You may have heard of him. But yeah, like if you look online, people say, "Oh, this guy is far right. He's a Nazi. He's this and that." What I got out of the book is called 12 Rules for Life. So he has 12 chapters, and in each one, he gives a rule and he goes through examples of scientific studies or personal experience to kind of support his point. And what I get out of that is it's cool to see, like, like one of his rules, I think, is if you see a cat on the road, stop and pet it, something like that. So it's cool to see how is he going to support this claim and what does it mean. Obviously, he's talking about physically. Actually, if you see a cat, it might be a good idea to pet it, but of course it applies to other areas. It's been a while, so I don't remember all the details, but it was a fun read. It's always a fun read to see how someone is going to support their point.
Yeah, and I think that's like kind of what I'm realizing too, is like being such in the digital age and listening to all these like super short condensed messages where, Twitter's whatever, 280 characters or something now. And even if you're watching like YouTube, it's like, if it's more than like 10, 15 minutes, a lot of people just tune out. So just giving someone the time to actually expand and have some kind of long form thought where it's not just super condensed messaging. And like, it's become almost too easy to just flip on even the news or Twitter or Facebook or whatever, and see something you don't agree with, and you just discount it right away, or you throw it out. Oh, they must be crazy, or they're a Nazi, or they're whatever at this point. And like, as much as there are a lot of bad people out there and a lot of crazy ideas and stuff, I think it is important that we try to at least kind of understand. And I think that's something we've really lost as a society, where we get in these super echo chambers where no one's talking to the other party now. You get in these really tight-knit groups. Everyone kind of beats their chest and gets fluffed up about these issues, but then no one stops to say like, hey, well, why do you actually think this way? For both sides of any debate, right? It's just like, no, it's my way or the highway. And I don't think we should focus on that as much as we do. And it's so much easier to do that in a form like we're reading, where you do kind of force yourself to slowly actually listen to someone's thoughts and go through it and take it up. So that's going to been one of my 2021 resolutions, is just trying to read more. I kind of do the same thing of like put in an hour before bed, just read something. I mean, I'm not going out of my way to find books that like I really disagree with, or that I would consider like crazy or political or anything like that. But even just to kind of slow your own mind and actually stop and think about what someone's saying. I like mainly nonfiction books for that. Like nothing really against fiction, but just the actual like, oh, this person has this system for being more productive or for getting this done or whatever it is, it just kind of makes you stop and think. And like, what am I doing in my day-to-day life? Is it right? Is it wrong? How can I improve? And I think from what you've described, that's a lot of what you're reading as well. It's kind of those like, I wouldn't call them self, I mean, maybe self-help. I don't know what you'd call them exactly, but those kind of like nonfiction productivity and kind of idea books, I guess.
So what are you reading, or is there something memorable you've read recently?
Right now, I'm working on Atomic Habits. I picked up that book.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really good. So it's about kind of forming habits, hopefully for the best, and how to, I guess, not just how to form them. I think there's a lot out there on that, but kind of doing the smaller gains. Like, don't just strive for, oh, I want to become like you're saying, like practicing your writing skills. Maybe your goal is to write a book. Try not to just focus and like go all out and kind of what you already said, like waiting for those motivations to occur and hoping that one day you're going to sit down and write half a book. Instead, kind of doing what we've already described of like sit down and build that small habit for writing for 20 minutes, or pick something you want to write about. Pretty much exactly what you're actually talking about. That's why when you were saying that, I was like, wow, this is really ringing true. That's a lot of what this book is about. And for me, I don't necessarily read a chapter then immediately sit down and be like, oh, how can I make my life better? Or how can I, do this or that? But I do like to think like, oh, like, and there's a lot of psychology and this and that. And it is interesting to be like, oh, is this why I do this habit, or why I do this thing, or why I don't do this thing? And sometimes it is like, and I found with COVID, especially in my job, a lot of my team is based out of California or the West Coast. So they're 3 hours behind us. So I don't usually have to be up like 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. to get on a call, because most of them aren't getting on till noon or so, which is 9 a.m. their time. So I found myself in the last few months being really like unproductive and just kind of slow getting going in the morning. So I'm just trying to like get in the habit of reading this book at night, because it kind of makes me half tired. So I actually go to bed at a decent time versus staying up playing a game or making a game. And then it kind of also serves as motivation in the morning to be like, you know what? Yeah, I should actually set an alarm and really force myself to get up and get a decent breakfast and get cleaned up and all that stuff. Because it's really easy, especially now when you're not seeing anything. And most people, if you're working from home, you don't have those same habits, and it's easy to get out of the groove.
Okay, we're back. Got cut off. Sorry about that.
No worries. I mean, that's how it goes. I think everyone's used to that at this time, working from home and stuff. Someone's always disconnecting, or that, can you hear me, or can you see my screen? I don't know how many times I've heard that in the last year. So I think we're doing okay.
Yeah.
So I guess before we disconnected, we were talking about reading and taking up perspective of other people. What have you been reading?
Okay. Well, last year I read, I think, 29 books.
That's pretty good.
Well, yeah, 13 of those were like the Walking Dead comic book volumes.
Yeah.
So I read a mix of comic books, a bunch of novels, and I read Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell, which is not a novel. It's a nonfiction book about how people it's weird when you talk to someone you don't know, and what can result from interactions between, for example, the police and when they do a stop on the road. So the specific example was in the U.S., a case of a woman named Sandra Bland, who was pulled over, and eventually she committed suicide in the jail. So anyway, there are a bunch of real life examples. So I read that last year. Right now, I'm reading War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, the oldie, and it's really boring, but I'm halfway through.
I think I read that in high school. It might have been one of the mandated books. I don't remember, but I definitely remember reading it at some point.
Yeah. So yeah, last year I spent way too much money on just collecting books.
Yeah.
So now I have a rule this year. I'm not buying a book because I need to get through these. So let's see, some of them I have to read The English Patient, which is also boring, but I got it as a gift. So I feel bad because I told that person, this book is really boring, I'm not going to read it.
Wow, brutal.
I know, but now I feel like I should go back and finish that up.
Yeah, I hope that was someone you had a good relation with, or at least you used to, and then you were just cutting them down.
I feel like it kind of soured things. I don't really have a relationship with this person anymore,
Ouch.
but it's for myself because it makes me feel better if I get through it.
Yeah. Fair enough. So,
Uh,
are you still a paper person, like actually reading hard books? I've been debating going to like a Kindle or a Kobo lately, and I like it. I think in theory, I mean, cost more upfront, but then you don't have to amass a giant bookcase or have physical room for these things. If we ever go back to traveling, if my job requires that at some point, presumptually, just being able to have that on a book, and I'll have that instead of a book. I've been thinking about it, but how about you? Have you tried one of those? Are you into the e-readers or just paper copy still?
I do both.
Yeah.
I have I have a Kobo, so I have a case for it too. Um, this is my second Kobo. The first one I got maybe 10 years ago. I think this is called a Kobo Aura.
Hmm.
It's pretty good. The e-ink is nice because it's not hard on the eyes. Like if you use an iPad or a phone,
Yeah.
it really bothers your eyes after a while. But this is nice because you can change the brightness and it's just easy on the eyes. Like you said, this is good for when you're traveling because you can carry a number of books with you in just one handheld size. But I really do prefer the hard copy books to read, especially if you're reading outside on a summer day. It's just nice to have
Yeah.
a book in your hand in the sun.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been debating it, and that's like I had my mom actually had an old Kobo from like 2010 or something. It was one of the really early ones, and I've been borrowing it, and I actually haven't really started using it yet. But even just initially, like holding it in your hand, and I don't know what it is. It just doesn't feel right to me, and
Mm.
I really don't want to. What I'll probably end up doing if I do end up with a bunch of books is just like read the book. If I'm not usually someone that reads a book more than once, just like donate it to the library or get rid of it somehow. There, I know we have a one of those little libraries like people put on their front lawns or whatever, where it's just like a birdhouse with books in it essentially. So maybe recycling it that way because I don't know. Like, do you keep your books? Do you have like a massive bookshelf somewhere that you're like a collector of them?
No, I did. I go through phases. So I think I collected all the books I got as gifts or purchased from when I was 8 years old until like maybe 17 or 18. So I had like two shelves full of books and I just donated them all one by one.
Mhm.
And now I really miss some of them, like the Harry Potter book series, and they were all kids' books. Um, so right now I've amassed a pretty good collection, but this time around I have a plan to keep them for maybe 20 years if possible, especially first editions. So now I'm looking at it more like a possible um, investment
Yeah.
so that you can sell it off in the future. But also because I know from experience that 10 years after donating a bunch of books, I miss them. So if I give it 20 years, at least I'll know. Like, oh,
That's
I
a
really
long
don't
time
need
though.
this.
What do you do with the physical books in that time? Do you put them on a shelf? Do you box them up in the basement? What's your approach there?
I whatever's on the shelf is what I haven't read. So it's right next to me, and I just feel bad every day because there's so many of them. Um, whatever I have read, I put it in a box, and it's in the closet behind me. So I don't have a huge collection. So for now, there's enough closet space. But there will come a time when there's nowhere to put it, and it's at that point I have to get rid of some of them. So I'll have to get rid of some of them early. I think regret is just part of the game. You're gonna end up donating something that you miss later on. So I usually just give them to the Value Village or the Goodwill.
At least if you're donating or even selling it, like you're getting some value out of it after it's kind of had its life, after you've read it and you've gotten your value out of it. Like I had I guess I still do in the basement, a really big game collection that I've like never really sold a game. And being a game dev, I've been collecting and playing them really since I can remember. And I got a few hundred games, but like a PS2, like a mediocre PS2 game these days goes for like 5, $10 or something. And it feels like I don't want to just necessarily like throw them out. I mean, they might be useful or fun to someone still. I guess I could donate them, but it's just now I have this huge collection of stuff I got to deal with somehow. And we live in a pretty small house now. And I'm like, I just don't have the space for it. Or even if I do, I don't necessarily, I've just kind of outgrown having a huge collection of games where I'm like, I'm never going to play these again, or a very little chance I will. But then I have the same kind of connection where I'm like, what if I do? Am I going to miss them? Are my kids going to want to play these in 20 years? I don't know.
Yeah, I've been through that, and I went through a phase where I just got rid of basically everything I could, from books, my old Kobo, iPod Classic. Um, a lot of those things I missed after a while, but at that time, my thinking was, stuff just keeps you hooked into the material world. So let me get rid of as much stuff as possible so that I can be free and live happily.
I
It didn't
no,
really work out like that.
I can appreciate that though. I've definitely had those. I mean, even right now, I'm kind of on that where I think I'm just so tired of like being stuck in the city, being pent up at home. I'm like, I just want to go out and like live like with so much less stuff. Like I always talked about like moving out to like the woods, getting out of the city or like a rural area or something. I've definitely been on those spirals before. We just like I want to get rid of this stuff. You kind of want something new. You're chasing something. Like, are you holding on to something by keeping something physical? I've definitely been
Yeah.
there. I've been trying to do the same thing recently. It was just like I used to have an office where like the wall behind me was just like bookshelves and a bunch of stuff. And I'm like, why do I keep this all? It just kind of gets in the way. Like, do I really enjoy it that much? I don't know. But it's interesting to hear that you kind of had that experience and you got rid of it and now you're like, well, it didn't really change that much.
Well, I mean, yeah. Well, I should say, I'll rephrase it. Just going through the process of getting rid of things that I considered valuable, it did have an effect on me. So there was a period of time where, I couldn't distract myself with a Kobo or a PS2 or a PS3 and a bunch of these other things. So it was in that period where I spent a lot of time just alone, just like thinking and sitting and forcing myself to be bored basically
Mhm.
and not distract myself. So that time was valuable. But coming out of that, what I value now is the ability to have stuff, but create routines where you're only using the stuff as needed. It's really hard still because with like going on Twitter or Instagram, those are not designed for you to just use it and leave.
Yeah.
It keeps hooking you back in. So I'm developing this kind of I would say my relationship with technology is better now, where it's not like I have to use it all the time. Although I do go through smaller periods where I am binging on Instagram or Twitter. So I just set out a day. So on Mondays, I'll download the Instagram app. I'll just use it obsessively for the day and then delete the app so I can't use it for the next 6 days.
I've been
Uh,
trying something similar recently where I kind of found the same thing where like I'd wake up in the morning and if I didn't have something scheduled right away, I would just sit and flip through whatever social media for a while. And it was kind of the same thing of like after a while, you just why am I doing this? Like what value does this give me? Right. Like I not really enjoy it. I don't really find it fun. It's just kind of mindless filler. And I've been trying that as well lately. Like I've had thoughts of like I should just get rid of my phone. I'm like, why do I really like? I like the actual phone feature of it. Like I like being able to be connected to people, but then so much of it is just like it kills time and kind of wastes time and distracts you. I mean, essentially everything about a cell phone is made to distract you and to keep you on that device. And I've definitely found the same thing. And I've been trying to keep my phone out of my room at night. Like I leave it charging like out in the living room or like in my office. I just went and got like a standard little alarm clock off Amazon and plugged that in and use that. And then at night, even if you can't sleep or something, just not having your phone beside you as that like really easy distraction, I found it makes a world of difference. Like I go to bed earlier at night. I do like I've kind of have my own rule that I've said like if I can't sleep, it's okay, but like I'll do a Sudoku puzzle or I'll read. Like I don't go with like the I have to just sit here and do nothing, but at least I want to make it so it's like it's not just mindless scrolling all the time. And I'm interested to hear your process because I have the same thing. I think I uninstalled Instagram Definitely LinkedIn and Twitter, mainly because those two are so linked with my work, and even my,
Yeah.
my work email I got rid of off my phone because we're a global company. People are digging you at all times of the day. Like it never really stops vibrating or notifying you of stuff. And I found it to be really useful, especially when we are locked in so much. It's just like that mental break from just constant distraction. And then when you are on technology or you are on one of those apps, you're there with a purpose, more or less. And I would assume you're probably the same way when you're trying to write like blog articles or post or whatever. It's like when you go on, you're there for a purpose. So like, I'm going to check what my friends are doing, but I'm not going to go to the explore page just to scroll through random nonsense. I don't know how you found that system or those systems you're working with.
Well, it's definitely hard because specifically with Instagram, it's designed so that you can just keep scrolling.
Yep.
And I definitely do that. I have a couple of strategies with that. So first, I just, for the most part, I follow people that I know in real
Mhm.
life, or people from high school or university, people I've either had a conversation with or they're in the same class or something like that. So in that way, if I'm scrolling through the post feed, I just keep scrolling through until I reach the last time I stopped, and then there's nothing else. There's no athletes, there's no organizations, none of that.
Mhm.
So that helps. Then personally, my so there are two types of people who have a million unread email messages and people who have zero. I'm the zero guy.
Me too.
So I have to go through everything available in front of me. So I go through all the posts and then I go through all the stories just because it feels good just to get it out of the way.
Mhm.
So that's what I do. And I'm not, so I try to go on Instagram with a purpose. So if I'm going to post something, I end up making it on a day where I'm planning to use that app. So on Mondays. However, in other instances, like today, I have to, message back and forth with other people to set up a podcast or discuss something. So there are exceptions to that. Then uh, I have a bad habit of just going through a bunch of random websites like Google News. I check out the NBA website, a bunch of other stuff. So I know I'm not going to be able to control every single one. So I take it a few at a time. So on my, I have an iPad. So on my iPad, I have groups of apps and I label them Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So today, in today's Tuesday. So in the Tuesday box, I have LinkedIn, Tumblr, and Letterboxd. Letterboxd is a movie
Mhm.
sharing app. So yeah, so it's on Tuesday. I have permission to binge as much as I want on LinkedIn or Letterboxd or Tumblr. But after today, I won't be touching that for another week because
Yeah.
Instagram is kind of fluid where it can go on either day. I either just keep it outside of the boxes or I just keep moving it between boxes.
Now, do you find like do you use like a digital well-being, like you said, permission? Do you have like a physical or I guess a digital lock on those for the days that you don't, or do you just like manage that yourself?
No, I don't have a lock. I'm pretty good just this way. Locks, I would just get annoyed. I would just turn it off because it's a feature and I like playing with features.
Yeah. I
So,
do that. I tried I have a Samsung. I'm an Android user, and they have a built-in digital well-being type program built into the OS. And at night, I think at like midnight or 11 or whatever, it goes like black and white, and
oh yeah.
it's just enough to make it kind of like annoying, especially when you are using so much like Instagram or something when it becomes black and white and you're kind of like, I can't really fully see what this is, or like I don't know, it just makes it less exciting in a way.
Yeah.
And for me, it does serve as that reminder of like, hey, shouldn't be on this right now. Like, you made it black and white in this mode for a reason. And I do find it kind of works. And their tooling makes it just hard enough to undo it that I don't just go and be like, disable it, just turn the lock off. Cause I've definitely done that in the past, where I've had like on my computer, cause I'm there so much of my days sitting at my desk, where it'll be like, okay, have a website blocking app that blocks Facebook all day and stuff. But it's just so easy to turn it off that I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
whatever, I'll turn it off for 20 minutes. It's not a big deal. But I found that works. And I think for me, really trying to make things inconvenient for myself has also worked, where I always designed my layout of my phone and like the apps with intent and with purpose. So I was always like, what are the apps I use the most? Instagram, Facebook, whatever. Put them all down near the bottom right hand corner of the screen, because it's where I hold my phone and it makes it easier to get to them. And when I uninstalled all the apps just because I was wasting too much time and not really happy with them, I reinstalled a few that I found I actually used. Like, I uninstalled Facebook for a bit, but I did eventually bring that back in. But it went to like the back of my phone because it was the most like latest thing I installed. So it wasn't front page. It was like 3 or 4 pages in. And even just doing that, I found that like you break that habit of just quickly opening your phone, hitting the button. And I've been trying to do that even like kind of with physical life now, of like, if you do have a meeting or something in the morning, like lay out your clothes the night before, kind of even just decide what you're doing that day before, so you're not wasting that like mental energy of like making those decisions. It sounds really small, but waking up and having a game plan, I find personally, like, I don't know if I'd say it excites me, but at least it's like, okay, I'm waking up, I know this is step one, I'm going to go do this or that, and I've already made those decisions. And I find that really helps me as well, outside of the, both in the digital world, is just like making apps harder to get to. It slows me down, I go to them as much. And then the reverse of like the physical world of like, if I do want to get up and stop wasting time on my phone, like have a plan the night before, get excited about something. I always used to try to like go through emails and stuff in the morning, which I hate emails. Like, if I could get rid of my email, I would. But it's, part of necessary evil, I guess, of the modern world. But then I think that was also part of it, where I was like, I know I've decided that I'm going to do emails first, but I hate it, and therefore I don't want to go to work first thing in the morning because I got to have to go and read through the inbox. So now I try to start the day with something I'm actually looking forward to. If it's just like making a little demo or trying a new game or whatever it is, doesn't really matter. As long as it's like half an hour of something I enjoy, I feel like I'm a lot more likely to get up and start doing that thing I enjoy. And then probably, even if I spend 20 minutes on that, I've at least gotten up. I've started to be productive. I've done all my things I need to do, and I can move on to the thing I don't like. And I've still probably like taken the same amount of time, because before I would just procrastinate, stay on the phone, stay doing whatever until I absolutely had to get up to do the thing I didn't like. So I've been really kind of experimenting with that lately and seeing what that leads to. And so far it's been good, but we'll see if the habits stick or not.
And that's a great point, that you want to do something you like to do or you're excited to do once you get up, because when you go to bed you'll have that in your mind, and it's like an alarm for your mind. It's like time to do that thing that's awesome. So
Exactly.
I had that same thing in mind on Friday, because I really wanted to watch WandaVision. So
Mm-hmm.
I ended up waking up at 5:30 just without an alarm because I was excited to watch it. So I watched the 2 episodes. But now that I talk about it, I'm realizing that the way I have tried to build discipline is by getting up early and doing something. So, like taking a shower or going downstairs to get a drink of water, so that you move your body and you're less likely to go back to sleep.
Yeah.
But your point is, I think, something I'm going to try now, which is figure out what are you looking forward to and do that for half an hour, because then you're like, excitement will keep you awake, and it'll keep you awake just long enough so that you don't want to fall back to sleep. So it's I've always tried the opposite approach, where it's like I want to do something hard and something I don't want to do at the start of the day, so the rest of the day is easier. But obviously it's not working for me, so I'm going to try what you said.
I've always had that approach as well. Like for me, I like to kind of batch things together. Like if I do have to go through a bunch of emails or do whatever task, put them all together so I have more time later in the day. And I'm really bad for, if I am excited about a project or working on something, I usually tend to stay up late and then push myself. And then you pay for it the next day because you're really tired. You got to wake up and do that thing you don't like. And then it just kind of slows you down and you don't do it, or you do it, but like way less productive. So I've been trying to play with that and make it, like I said, hard where, and it doesn't always work, but like, okay, you got to go to bed at 11 and read a book or do something that's just interesting enough that you want to do it, but not interesting enough that it's going to keep you up all night either.
Mm.
And then, like I said, like leave the technology, leave the distractions out in another room. And then when you wake up, you're like, oh yeah, I was doing this thing last night. I want to get back to it. And I think that's probably one of my biggest challenges personally is just putting down that thing at night, like reminding yourself that like, it's better to do this process now as much as you're excited about whatever it is. Leave it for the night, come back to it tomorrow. You'll get up, you'll have a better day and do all that. And I don't think it's anything new. I mean, I think a lot of successful people have figured that out and they do that for a long time. It's just for me, I've always been such a night owl. And when I get on a project that I like, I want to work on it forever, and really trying to learn to like, hey, take a break. Not everything needs to be done in one night. And I think COVID's taught me that as well, where before you had so much else going on in the day that you kind of were forced to have breaks and forced to do other things, where now it's like I get up out of bed, go to the kitchen, eat some food, get a shower, come to my office, and like I'm pretty much sitting here for the day. Like there's not a whole lot else that happens in that day, as boring and depressing as that is. But it's also made me realize like, hey, you need to have breaks. You need to have that like water cooler moment in the office or whatever it is, like something that's just a small distraction, and forcing yourself to actually stop is something really new for me that I've only learned within the last year, where I was always super gung ho of like, get everything done now, have your portfolios lined up, work on your projects all night, release projects, like always super about productivity and trying to get ahead and doing something you love. But now I'm kind of to the point of like, you can still do all that, but also take breaks, and it's kind of better for you. And I think you end up with better products at the end of the day as well.
Yeah, I think that is something that I have learned by aging. Like at some point you can't just go 100% all in, because you start to realize the next day you're going to be super tired, and when you're drinking 3 or 4 cups of coffee in the morning, it's a sign like, okay, just chill out a little bit. So um yeah, as I get older, I realize to produce quality work consistently, you you can't go 100% all the time. Maybe you can go 75, 80% most of the time, but you need to reserve that energy for critical times, like let's say you have an emergency customer problem or something. Then you're all good to go for a whole night. You might stay up the whole night. But if you're doing that every day, it's going to start showing up. And actually, I have also tried putting out all my electronics outside the room, and it works great. I feel relaxed. I just having screens in front of me, I'm just thinking about what to do.
Yep.
And with a laptop, it's the worst because you can do so much with a laptop. And that's one reason I like the Kobo e-reader, is I use it just for reading books, so I know what I'm doing when I'm using it. Or I have a smartwatch too. I use it only for jogging or walking, so I know when I put that watch on, this is the purpose. But with a iPad or a laptop, it's like you can do so much. It's hard to set those rules for yourself. It's like, I'm only going to focus on this one internet tab, and I'm not going to switch to iTunes real quick, then switch to Excel, and then come back.
Yeah, I've been trying to do something too where I try to keep one area or like one machine or device, whatever, with one purpose as well. And I find that it helps, but it's really hard to do, especially with COVID. And when you are so constrained, like working from home, both where I'm sitting now works as kind of like a leisure, like doing something like this or playing games or making my own projects. But then it's also where I sit and do work. And it becomes really easy that like when you have to do some kind of work in the day you don't want to do, you have to answer that email or talk to that client or do whatever. It becomes so easy to distract yourself. And it's just by habit. Like I find myself so often that if I have to wait for something to load, even for like a second, all of a sudden I have Facebook open and I don't even notice I'm doing it. Like if I open a web browser, so many times I use shortcuts that I'm like, oh, wait, how am I on Instagram? How am I on Facebook? So I've been trying to come up with strategies of like, okay, at night, if you're going to read, you only do that in the bedroom, or you only sit on your couch, or do that, and like really associate that one action with that one place. And for me, it's been hard, especially now with COVID, because we are so constrained to one small area. And before, this used to just be like, it was still an office, but it was more or less a place to hang out and play games and work on my own projects. It wasn't a working office necessarily. To the point now where like I'm trying to set up a little, I had an old TV and like an old chair and stuff in the basement, and it's not a nice basement. It's an old like 100-year-old house, like unfinished. It's about 6 feet high, and I'm about 5'10". So like you're really just like skimming the top of your head if you move at all. It's not a great spot, but I'm like I'm so desperate for more space, and just to have I guess it really just comes down to more space and being able to separate it. So I have a little recliner set up on like an old crappy desk that I had like 10 years ago, with like a 40-inch TV like 10 inches away from me. And I think to my right there's like the cat crap with the cat litter box right beside me, and it's awful. But I'm like, I need so much more space. And but so far it's actually working. Like dedicating areas, like, okay, if I'm down here, I'm just playing a game, hanging out or whatever. If I'm in this room, I'm at work, I'm just doing work tasks. If I'm out in the living room, I'm doing whatever else. And I found that to be a really useful system as well.
Yeah, I have a desk in my bedroom, and I think it was the worst idea because you're sleeping in the same place where you're doing work. I mean, I'm not doing like paid work, but I consider writing and everything I do
Yep.
basically working technically. But I don't have the luxury of just going to another room. But I mean, technically, I do. There's a desk in the basement too, but it's always cold there, so I don't like that either.
Yeah, like that's like me. It's like the basement's not a nice spot in this house by
Yeah.
any means, but I still find that at least having that little bit of separation has been helping. And not even just like the basement, but even just like, yeah, I spend more time in the living room now, where like I used to spend all my time in one spot, just because like I'm in front of the computer, I have the monitors, I have the comfy chair, the setup, the everything I need. But then I find it's just too easy to mix disciplines and get work and
Mm.
leisure and everything else mixed up. And I've been trying it, but I've been lucky that I haven't had to have the desk in the bedroom for a long time, because I've heard people say that like associating like just sleeping in there essentially. It's like, oh, if you're in this room, you're here to sleep. And like I've always had that. I should say I've never had that issue. Like when I go to bed, I'm out in like 2 seconds, because it's like I know I'm here to sleep, and then that's it. So
So yeah, you've been um, busy as of late. You're reading, you have meetings online, you're working, you have a lot going on. So you're using your mind a lot, regularly every day. And coming from an engineering background in school and work, that's basically the whole job, in my experience.
mhm.
Um, you're always thinking. So over time, I've started to notice that what I eat is going to affect how I'm able to think. So I personally have like I've just found foods or meals to avoid mostly rather than to eat. Like you kind of know when you're feeling sluggish after you eat whatever. So how, like, has that had any impact? Like, are you choosing what to eat?
No.
Okay,
And that's one
okay,
that I probably I should more than I do. Like I absolutely feel it too. It's like, oh, I just ate, I don't know, some chocolate or something. Like you feel
okay.
worse after, like it's there. But for me, it's just been one of those things of like, I guess I haven't cared enough about to actually like sit down and be like, I should plan out my meal, or I should eat, more protein, or less this or less that. I've never gotten into it. I think if there's anywhere with habits and like, I guess like just trying to better yourself that I've always been really blind with, it's been that one. And it's one
Okay.
I've always kind of struggled with. And it's just, for me, I've never found it to be an interesting one. Like
Right.
physical health and like healthy eating has never been one that's interested me for whatever reason. Like I've always been kind of into like habits and improving yourself and everything else in other cases, like digital well-being and stuff. But that one has never been one that's gotten to me. And like I have dogs and stuff, so I kind of have. I'm really grateful for that. That it's a constant like, hey, you have to go out and walk them every night because they
Right.
get bored and they cry, and like it keeps you out and keeps you moving. But I think if I didn't have them, like I'd find that personally really hard. It's just always been one that I've struggled with.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's cool. Like, most people are like that. you the only time it comes up is when things like if someone has poor health, then
Yeah.
people start with food usually or food. But you're walking your dogs every day, so I'm sure you're getting enough uh, movement for your body
I mean, I could
to
always be getting more. Like, I definitely one of those things that like I realize sitting as much as I do is like part of the job and
yeah.
just kind of the lifestyle. Um, it's one of those like I should do it, but then it's just I guess I should probably build it into the habits more of kind of the same thing
Mm.
of like just dedicate that. I mean, it already is a daily thing. I go for a walk, but look, I've never been one to like I need to go to the gym today or like get my
Right.
frustrations out. I've never built any association, I don't think, with a physical act and like negative or positive really, where it's
Right.
some people, and I don't know about you, are like so much like I need to go to the gym or else I go stir crazy or I get my emotions out by running or whatever it is. And I've just never had that ever. So
I mean, yeah, I mean, I in the like back in high school and before then even, I was always driven by trying to like perform really well. Like I
mhm.
did sprints in track and field, and I was closer to the bottom of people who are fast. So I was always trying to push myself. And over time, it had bad effects on me, which was you're always pushing your body, but you're not really recovering properly. And that combined with a couple of injuries down the road has left me now with, if I'm not busy talking to you or doing something that's mentally engaging, the first thing my attention goes to is something is hurting in my body, and that like
Mm.
whether it's my back or my legs. So for me, the only reason I'm so focused on food right now is I'm always paying attention, like what is going to make me feel better and worse than the condition I'm in. So this month, I'm actually doing a plank challenge with a few of my friends. So we're seeing who can accumulate the most plank hours throughout 27 days.
Mhm.
So I've gone a little ham. I think 2 days ago, I did in total 23 minutes of planking.
That's pretty long.
Um, and not at once. um, so what happens is everything just hurts the next day. But I noticed one night I ate a bunch of steamed broccoli with some oil, some salt, some lime juice, and I just felt so much better. So the only reason that I'm gonna remember that is because of the effect it had on me. But when I wasn't exercising so intensely, yeah, I was the same way. It's like I
Uh,
don't really
d-
care what I'm gonna eat.
do you enjoy cooking as well?
I do right now. I'm not doing it because my parents are cooking, um, and there's no need to cook, so I'm lazy that way.
I hate cooking with a passion. I am a lazy person. I am awful in the kitchen. I like to think I'm a relatively smart dude. I can figure things out when I need to. Put me in the kitchen, I lose all common sense. Like it just goes out the window. I'll try to cook with my fiance and she's always giving me heck. She's like, "Why would you do this?" I'm like, "I don't know, it just seemed easy." I think growing up, I never really had like dishwasher and stuff. So you're always like, oh, if I make a big meal, I got to scrub all this by hand
Yeah.
tonight. So I'm infamous for like, all right, well, if this is supposed to take 3 pots, how can I mix them all together and do it in one so I don't have to do as many dishes? And it's turned out in so many disasters, so many times, and you think you would learn from it, but I don't. And I just keep going and making awful food. That Gordon Ramsay meme thing when he like puts the bread up to that girl's face and calls her an idiot sandwich. My fiance does that to me all the time. She calls me an idiot sandwich
Oh my
nonstop.
god.
And
Oh my god.
and I think that's it. I think she's just destroyed all my kitchen confidence. But I am an awful cook, and that definitely plays into it. Where I'm someone that's like, I don't think about it beforehand. I'm like, oh, it's 7 o'clock, or whatever. I'm hungry, but by that point, I don't want to cook. I'm definitely someone that needs to plan it. Where I have done that in the past, where it's like, oh, let's meal prep a bunch of lunches, and usually in my head, the stuff like that's more for time savings and just the convenience factor of it, not necessarily the health benefits of it. But I think for me, if I ever really wanted to get into it, that's how I would have to do it. Is like I'm a planner. I'm someone that's strategic and I'm sure I could figure it out and do it. but I need to like sit down on the weekend with a purpose and be like, all right, this week you're trying to cut sugars or eat more protein or whatever it is, and come up with a game plan and like execute it, batch cook these things and just eat it. I don't know if I'll ever get to that point. I think like what you said, usually people get to that when they have like a health scare or, you know, some major event happens. Maybe it'll happen for me. Hopefully it happens, you know, before that, before I end up having a heart attack and then, you know, thinking about it. But it's been one that's just, it's never gotten to me. And I think it's a combination of not enjoying cooking and then essentially just not caring about the physical as much as it is like the mental and just like that side of things.
Man, I think you're fine. Like you said, as long as there's no problem, there's really no need to pay attention to it.
I was awful. So I used to work downtown before I took this job, before COVID. I worked downtown, and I would always go to like the dollar store or like the bulk barrel or bulk barn, whatever's down there, and buy a snack. And it wasn't even because I was like hungry. It was just like downtown London's boring. I wanted to get out of the office, so I would just wander over to pick up something like just for a lunch break, essentially. And since I stopped working downtown and at home, I lost 35 pounds simply
Jeez.
because I don't work downtown. I haven't really done like I didn't start really exercising. In fact, I was exercising more than I was going to the gym and stuff a little bit at that point. And then when I stopped working downtown, the gym wasn't there, and then COVID obviously killed any notion that was going to happen. But just that routine, it's the same thing as that habit of like I was in the habit of going across the street for a lunch break just because I wanted out of the office to get a snack. And essentially I just cut that out, and because I had to, because conditions changed and I didn't really focus on anything, and I lost a bunch of weight. So I think for me, it is more just about trying to set up those decent habits around food and around like having strategies for that.
Yeah. I mean, I still get tired.
Yeah.
Doing this.
I think for me, that'll probably be it. Like I'll hit eventually a point of like mentally, I feel like I've taken care of the digital distractions, get more sleep, feeling better mentally. And eventually it'll come down to like the what's next? How do you get the more performance, or how do you feel better? And eventually it'll all hit that point of like, yeah, I should probably learn how to cook, or I should do that. And I've actually thought about it a few times. I'm like, I should probably just go and take some like cooking lessons or whatever. I don't know what it is. I'm awful at it, but I think I need to seek professional help at this point, where like, I know you can look up a recipe online, but I still don't do it. So maybe if I actually went to a physical like cooking class, I'd actually pick up on some new skills.
But I mean, that's I think that's one way to do it. If you're okay with failing a lot, it's more fun to just make stuff up. Like if you haven't made a grilled cheese, it's like, all right, well, there's bread and cheese. Let's see how I can screw this up.
I mean, I can do that. And my thing is, I consistently screw it up and don't see the improvements. It's like my brain just turns off in the kitchen. I don't know what it is. Like most of the time it's like, yeah, you know, you burn yourself, you learn that's hot, you don't do it again. In the kitchen, I've made like the same thing like 3 times in a row because I'm like, I need to learn this, and I'll burn it every time, or I'll like destroy it in the same way every time. And I don't know what it is. It's like, I just cannot train my brain in the kitchen at all.
Well, I guess we just have to agree you're an idiot sandwich then.
I'm an idiot sandwich. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, man, that's yeah. So okay, couple of okay. So have you thought about? Well, you already have a YouTube channel where you have a Good Day Game Devs, right? That's the name.
That's the one. Yeah, it's kind of half active right now.
Yeah. So is that like I watched I think your first one about tips for game jams, and I just watched it because, you know, I'm making videos too, so it's fun to see how you're doing it. I'm not involved in any game jams, but I think it's awesome. You should, in my opinion, you should keep up with those because I like watching your videos. They look pretty good.
It's been an interesting journey. So, I mean, I started that because it was kind of another bored COVID hobby of like, hey, I can't really leave the house. What can you do at home? I had this technology. I remember one of the last things I did of like in-person events was go to PAX, so Penny Arcade Expo in Boston. And it was kind of always one of those like big, like bucket list item, not even a big, but just a bucket list item. I've always wanted to go to one of these big expos. And I mean, now with this job, or at least I hope I'll be doing those pretty often, like as part of work. But at the time I was just going personally. And that was like late February, early March. So like a week or two before the whole rural lockdown went into play. And I remember sitting there and being like, people are doing so much cool stuff. I haven't really released a game, or I hadn't felt like I had done a lot to really better my career in a while, I guess. Like I was teaching, I was working a decent job. It's not like I was unsuccessful or failing. I was just kind of bored with it, and I kind of wanted something different. And I remember at that convention taking some time and just making like a list of, it was, I mean, early 2020, making a list of like things I wanted to do. And I don't know why, but I was like, I should start a YouTube channel. I think I had gone to a panel or something, and they were talking about like YouTube careers, and I was like, I'll try it and see. And I never had the intent. I never wanted to be like a vlogger or a streamer or anything like that. It was purely for fun. So I made, I think, 2 or 3 videos, and they were kind of doubling because I was also teaching at the time. So I was able to use them on my personal channel just for fun, and then also double dip with some school stuff. And I guess I was actually, when I made those videos, I was doing online classes at the time as well. So I had a lot of the gear. I was into photography. I had cameras and lights and all that stuff. So I was like, let's put it to good use. And I made those few videos, and that's actually one of the things that helped land me the job. And it's one of the primary reasons I don't now, is because we do a lot of videos at work, either for the official channels or for like I'm constantly on giving like webinars and guest lectures and stuff, where it's kind of become like, okay, I need a break from that. I'm so burnt out by the end of the day. And there's also been interesting cases where when you are a little bit of a public figure for a big company, you have to watch what you put out a lot more than I ever thought before. Like if you have any kind of half risky opinion about anything, chances are someone will come and like try to hunt you down, and they're going to go and report you. And then, legal is going to contact you and be like, hey, what's going on here? We had someone call you this or that, or they said this, or they're claiming this. And sometimes it's just not worth the headache, in all honesty, where it's like, I can make this video. It can be completely unrelated. Like I could make a video about game jams or whatever. Someone says something racist in the comments, or says something bad in the comments that I'm not a part of at all. And we've had people where they come after you and they're like, oh, you're allowing this culture, and they'll try to report you or get you fired or whatever it is. Right. And at some point, it's just like, it just becomes a legal headache, and it's just not worth it. Where like we have legal teams that will approach people sometimes, be like, hey, this thing happened, and it's nothing serious. Like no one ever, if you haven't done something actually wrong, usually they just kind of say like, hey, we got this complaint, what's up? You explain yourself, and that's the end of it. But even at that, I don't want to talk to lawyers all day. No one wants to talk to lawyers all day, or anyone else, or HR. So it's just stay clear of it. So I'd love to get back to it. And I've actually thought of maybe expanding those videos into woodworking or into something else.
Oh yeah.
I mean, obviously game dev's my profession and my passion and what I'm there about. But I think with COVID and trying some other passions and learning some other things, like maybe it would be fun to just branch off and take that same, I guess, the same skills or those things I've learned and apply it to another trade or something else. I mean, we'll see. Right now, everything's kind of weird in the world, so I'm just kind of riding it out and trying new things. But back to what we were talking to at the beginning, like it was kind of the same thing you did, where you're like, I'm putting stuff out there just to get practice at these things. Yeah. Those videos, I don't think were particularly good, and maybe okay at best, very mediocre. But like it was enough that like I could now say, yeah, I've made YouTube videos, like here they are, versus people that were also applying for that same job and they've got nothing to show, right? So even if like mediocre is still better than nothing. And I think that comes back to that earlier point of just getting something done and doing something and being able to show some kind of worth.
Yeah. I mean, man, that must be crazy. Has it come up that you had to talk to lawyers for stuff you said?
I personally haven't. I've heard horror stories of people in the past on our teams that have, and it's not even what you said, like that example of people spouting off in the comments, that has happened. And it resulted in nothing in the end of the day. Like no one lost their job or got in any real trouble, but people will more or less headhunt you. I mean, that's just kind of internet cancel culture now, right? Where if someone doesn't agree with everything you say, whatever it is, you could be saying, like love and hug your neighbors and everyone's happy and be nice, and someone still will be like, this guy's a dickhead, let's report him or whatever. So yeah, you do have to be more careful, and it's made me a lot more aware of not that I ever posted anything risky. I mean, I didn't post all that much to any of my social to begin with, but it definitely makes you more aware of where you're posting to and what you're posting to those channels. I
Yeah.
know my Facebook since then, I've locked down more to like my direct friends and family. Usually it's people I physically know, people I've met in the
Yeah.
past. I like, and I deal with them there. And if I post anything there, which I don't very often, it's kind of directed more towards that group where I keep. Instagram's kind of a combination of it's mainly my friends and followers that like people I physically know, but I do have some like online followers that like, you know, I've given a webinar and someone went from the Zoom link and looked me up and found my Instagram and now they're following me or something. What's kind of that hybrid. And then LinkedIn and Twitter is pretty much just purely like professional at this point, where it's like,
Yeah.
use them. I kind of assume that the people following me there generally don't know me. They just saw me present at something. They're also passionate about game dev. So they're like, hey, you work at this company. I just want an in or whatever it is. I'm going to follow you. And it's definitely created this like tiered system in my head of like where social media falls and why I use each one for a different purpose.
Man, that like I that's one thing that I'm always scared of is people coming after you. Obviously, at this point, I'm not a public figure. Um, I don't even work at a company right now. So no one's really watching these episodes. So it's like my mom watches basically every one, and then a handful of other people watch a couple of them.
If I can pause
So
right there, I was
yeah,
thinking about something earlier today with your mom.
yeah.
I remember in high school, she used to make, I don't remember if they were samosas. They were
Mhm.
some kind of like vegetarian, like I think they were deep fried and they had like peas and stuff in them. And you used to not like them and you used to give them to me at lunch in high school and they were delicious. And I
Okay.
just want to tell your mom that she has good cooking. If she's watching right now, and even if she's not, you go after and you tell her that.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, after I post this one online, I'll give it a. I don't know if I should prime her and just say, "Oh, he said something about you." Maybe I'll do that, and then
Put it,
yeah,
and at the end of the episode, so she has to watch the full hour and a half or whatever
yeah,
first.
I know. Um, yeah, I don't know if they were samosas. Maybe they were. They could have been what we call bondas, which is it's just like a deep fried vegetable or something like
Yeah, I forget what they
plantain
were for
or
exactly, but I remember they were good. And you used to be like, "Hey, do you want these?" And I was like, "Hell yeah, I'll eat those."
I remember that. I don't remember what it was, but I remember
Yeah,
giving you stuff. So I'm gonna follow up with her and see what she used to give.
maybe your
Yeah,
mom can give me those cooking lessons. Maybe she's the person I need.
well, it's funny you say that because my mom and I started a YouTube channel together of recipes that she cooks often. Or, I mean, it started as my own channel, but since then we changed the name and now it's like me and her. So yeah, we're getting practice in how to show what to make, how to make it.
Yeah.
She self-published a cookbook. So yeah, she's interested in that stuff. So it's there online. It's called channel is called Kitchen Karma.
Okay, I'm gonna look it up after this.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Like it's not like high budget video editing. It's me with a phone, but we're
You
having
got to
fun.
start somewhere, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
It's about having fun, starting somewhere. You never know what'll happen. So,
yeah, yeah, dude. Was yeah. So I'm just yeah. I'm not a big name. No one's really listening to me. I'm not influencing people, but I don't know what it says about me. But I always imagine that I'm going to be huge someday, even though I'm not trying to be huge. Like
yeah,
it's not like I'm trying to say it as like it's a possibility. Like chances are
yeah,
very
and you
small.
want to protect yourself from future
Exactly.
stupidness, I guess, right? Of like, I don't want to say something dumb now, and then in 20 years, I'm going for a big position or a promotion or something, and someone looks up something stupid in the past. I totally get that.
It's also tough because just like you, back since high school, I limited myself to posting things online, like
Mhm.
for this very reason. And I had many blogs which I deleted, years ago with things I thought were embarrassing. Looking at it a year or two later,
Yep.
but after a decade of that, like at this point, I just personally am at a point where it feels like I have to. output something creative online for public consumption,
Yep.
because at some point, like you just can't hold all that in. So it's just a game where it's like you gotta, first of all, you gotta be true to what you say. um, I do my best to write and put stuff online that is based on personal experience, which is a good place to start.
Mhm.
And if it is opinions, then based on also personal experience, not just, for example, like I don't think I've ever said randomly like, oh, this NDP politician is wrong this for this reason, without any background in that topic at all. Like
Yeah.
I know that goes on, especially on Twitter. You just attack
Yeah. Oh
people.
yeah.
So yeah, I think it's just a weird game right now. It is a lot of cancel culture. You say one thing 10 years ago when it was okay to say that, and you get canceled now. Like I think a couple of years ago, Kevin Hart, the comedian, got in trouble because he had a tweet from years ago. He made a gay joke about his son or something like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then he decided to resign from hosting, I think it was the Oscars.
Yeah,
So
and it's weird because it like you said, like there's stuff that like something like that 10 years ago wasn't that out of place, right? Like that was pretty much the culture. I mean, I've been watching a bunch of movies from like the early 2000s and stuff, and it's like, how did they get away with these like dumb jokes or like using this language? Because like now it's like everyone's so protected and sensitive, but back then it was just like, yeah, that was just what every movie was. It was okay to say that stuff, and it is this weird like, I guess I never got that. Like I remember growing up and you'd be like, oh, someone's parents said something about like, like they had like a World War II opinion or something. And you'd be like, whoa, that's a hot take. Like, why would you say that? But it's like, I get that the older I get, where it is cultures change. And I think now they
yeah.
change so rapidly. That's like, you could say something today that seems totally commonplace. And then in 20 years, it's unacceptable or wrong or whatever it is.
Yeah, well, I mean, I hope that with the evolution of technology and the ability to communicate worldwide, I hope that people in general, like there develops some idea of considering context of content that was
Mhm.
posted. Right now, it's like, let's just cancel. But I really hope people start to consider like, okay, so this was 5 years ago when, I don't know, I'm just trying to think of an example. So 5 years ago would have been 2016. Only thing that comes to mind is the American election, but I'm trying to think of something else. But anyway, like, do you know what I mean? Like,
I know you, yeah, where it is like, yeah, what's even today, like we read a headline or you see a 5 second clip of something on TV, you're like, oh, that guy, what an idiot, or why did he do this or that? But it's like, if you just kind of pull back for a second and you watch the full 20-minute video that comes from, it's like, oh, that makes sense. That doesn't seem that crazy. Like that's just what's going on. And like, I think I have the same hope as you do that people think about that and context is important. But it seems right now like it's almost going the opposite way, where everything does get trimmed down so much. And so like the messaging gets compressed to that 5 second, that TikTok or that 140 character tweet, where like you only read the headlines. Like even I think with
yeah,
COVID and stuff, you see so many people that share stories, they only read the headline and then they take that as the truth, where like it might just be bad reporting that like the headline doesn't even match up with what the story is really trying to say, and like bad information gets out there. And most people, they just scroll through their feed and they just see the headline and they take that as the truth. And that's one that we really have to combat somehow, and it's really hard to do. And I think that paired with AI and like machine learning and these algorithms that these social media use is like, it you see that message, you see it really compressed, you take that one quick kind of hot take on it, and then it's like, oh, did you like that? I'm going to feed you a bunch more of that same thing. And then all of a sudden all that compounds up into one kind of thought or emotion, and you start taking that as the truth, or that those are the facts, when it's like, if you actually dive into this even remotely, you may not agree with it, or maybe you do, but you don't really know until you do take that time to dive a little bit deeper.
yeah, that's the hardest. One of the hardest things. Yeah, we'll wrap up soon. I gotta end it. One of the hardest things to do is Okay, so first of all, I do scroll through a bunch of news headlines, but I do it knowing that I'm looking for headlines. I'm not really looking for a story. The hardest thing to do is to consume headlines and stories, but keep in mind that you don't know what the story is based on the headline. Usually, I'll remember headlines so that if it comes up in conversation, we can dig deeper, maybe talk about, oh, yeah, that is a weird headline. Like maybe we should look into the story and then I'll read about it later. But yeah, if someone is just reading the headline and taking it as the truth without any questioning or in-depth study, like for example, let's say the headline is about me, like Akshay Rao says he loves dead dogs. You know, if that's the headline, like if I see that about myself, I'll be like, I don't say I love dead dogs. I made dead dog jokes. Doesn't mean I love dead dogs.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just something to keep in mind, and I think it will become part of the the like the general way to understand and consume news. But I think it's still in the infancy phase where now there's too many sources and they're just like they're public in Canada, at least they're big news sources like the CBC or CTV that generally have a good reputation. Like you don't really question. I don't question too much the where they get their facts and stuff because
Mhm.
usually they both say the same thing. So I'm guessing they have the same source. But with a bunch of news sources coming out, people are gonna have doubts about the validity of statements and news articles. So I don't know. I hope it gets better. So
I
yeah,
hope that between news outlets and like social media, like big tech, hopefully trying to take a little bit of a step back and being like, hey, this is a problem. I think everyone agrees that it's a problem. As much as like like fake news and all this as like a headline in itself, I do believe a bit of that, where it is like news outlets, especially American ones, tend to have way too much opinion and bias in a lot of the reporting, where it is like, okay, here's the same story. This is what Fox News is saying. This is what CNN's saying. And like so much of it is it's really written for one type of perspective. It's written for somebody that wants to believe a certain way. And I think tech's kind of the same way, even if they're not like Facebook doesn't publish posts per se, but like those algorithms do amplify those whatever you're feeling, whatever you're interested in. And it is easy to, anyone write a story and it gets shared and all of a sudden that's taken as truth or as fact. So yeah, I'm hopeful we're at that stage of stepping back, being like, okay, something's going on here culturally. We need to look at things more than just that quick view. We need to dive in a little bit. But then I'm like, I don't know how we go into that now because we're all so accustomed to that quick. What's the news? I'm going to scroll through. I'm going to look at it. That's it. And that's why I hope people do maybe slow down a little bit and don't just keep scrolling forever and go, and like maybe you do stop and you read a little bit and hopefully things get better. But we'll see how that goes.
yeah. Thank you for doing this, Ben. I had a great conversation, and I'd love to do it again sometime. Is there like for the five people listening to this, what do you want them to know about you, or how to find you online, or whatever you want to say?
Yeah, I mean, my name's really hard to spell, which makes it hard to tell people where to find me. But pretty much any social media platform, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, I guess, really. Maybe if you know me. If you don't know me personally, I'm probably going to decline you. But all the other ones, if you want to look up Ben Mcilmoyle, I'll be there. I think you showed the portfolio earlier, links to all
Yeah.
that stuff there as well. Always doing lots of cool stuff in the game dev space. If anyone wants to talk shop about anything game dev related or tech related, I'm always happy to do that. Whether it be they actually want some help with Unity or they just want to like show me a cool new game they're working on. I'm always interesting to see what people are doing. And I guess besides that, yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been fun. It's been a good few years since we've last chatted. So
Yeah.
hopefully we'll be able to do one again sometime soon.
Yeah, dude, I have plans of setting up a physical space, but that's like way down the line. So
If you ever get there, let me know because I'm all about like cameras and lighting and gear. So maybe we can collab in the future.
okay, yeah, cool, man. Let me. Okay.